Well, Tony, thanks for being with us this morning.
Hi, Damien. How are you going?
I followed your story and the Hall and Wilcox story, and I want to start from that. It's fair to say sometimes when you look back at your 17 years at the helm, there's a level of inevitability. It feels like, the business was growing, but it's not, of course, inevitable. I mean, there's strategy, there's positioning, and there would have been lots of people in lots of firms, I should say, in the Melbourne market that would have been as well positioned, if not in some ways better positioned, to do what you did and didn't do it. So I think we should start from the fact that, obviously growth is hard and involves strategic underpinnings and cultural underpinnings, but it is a great story, Tony, those 17 years you had at the helm. And I just want to acknowledge that at the outset, that I've looked on from afar and been very impressed. So let's start I think we're around the same vintage for what it's worth, I think. So let's start when you took on the helm. You would have been in your mid-30s or thereabouts. Was it clear to you then that where you wanted Hall and Wilcox, or did it develop more organically, the growth story?
Hi, Damien. It's great to be with you and appreciate the opportunity to chat about the Hall and Wilcox and my story. So when I took on the role in 2007 and leading up to that, I'm not sure that we knew exactly where we were going to go, but we had success in the 2000s at our firm in Melbourne, and I'd headed up our corporate and commercial and financial services practice, and that practice had grown and been successful and built some prominence, as had other practices in the firm. And we had a generation of partners that were moving on, including my predecessor, Noel Petrini, and my mentor, Keith James, and others. And there was a generation of partners who were coming through, people like Mark Dunphy, who headed up our employment practice and who became our chair, Mac McDonald, and many others. And we were mates. A number of us played AFL footy together. And there was just a sense that we wanted to take the firm forward and wanted the firm to be bigger and better and more prominent. And I suppose I'd always had an interest in leadership and had taken on leadership roles and had grown a really strong, prominent corporate practice. And I just wanted to do more, I guess, and to take the helm. So I was given that opportunity by Noel and others, and very much learnt on the job, to be honest.
As we all do.
Really tried to grasp it. And back then, being managing partner of a firm was a 50-50 role, a firm like ours. So I was still practicing and headed up our corporate practice and did some big transactions, but also had the opportunity to lead and to run the firm. And over time, as the firm grew, that became my full-time role, and I was focused more on being the leader of the firm and on developing as a leader and a manager.
When you stepped down, which is I think from July of last year or thereabouts, when your LinkedIn profile sums it up, you achieved in that tenure about 10 times revenue growth, and I think about 7 new offices. So you moved not only in terms of the growth story, but also in terms of geographical location. And you talked about the fact that at first you wanted to grow, you were young and you were inspired by the growth you'd seen. And then, of course, you get in the job. A couple of years later, how long does it take before you discard your practice responsibility at some level and just put your shoulder to the wheel of the growth story? Did it take some years?
Yeah, it took some years. It was kind of progressive, I think, Damien. I really loved practicing and running the firm. I liked doing both. And as the firm grew, especially as we grew nationally, it really became 2 full-time jobs. And so it just became inevitable that I needed to relinquish my practice and hand it off to others, and that wasn't my highest and best use. And I really needed to focus fully on leading and running the firm and investing in my own leadership capability. So I was really fortunate that the firm gave me the opportunity to do that. I could keep my hand in with clients and transactions and pick and choose a little bit. But over time, I relinquished my practice and handed it off to others. And whilst I tried to stay close to clients, and I think it was important to stay close to the revenue, by the time I was, 5 or 6 or 10 years in, I didn't really practice at all. And I think that that's important. I think that in a big business like our business was and is, you need someone as CEO effectively who's full-time committed to the role.
That's right. It's such a big job. Was the focus initially more on geography, or was there a strategic underpinning in terms of practice areas, or was it both? I mean, talk us through the milestones initially in terms of the growth story. Was it more geographically focused?
Certainly there was a strategy to grow and over time to grow nationally. I sometimes think that there's a bit of retrospective rationalisation with all of this stuff. It's not like we had a kind of deliberate plan to be a certain size and to hire certain people, over that 17-year period. We had a general sense that we wanted to grow and be better. Initially, that was actually in Melbourne, and we hired some great partners and teams in Melbourne to become one of the best firms in Melbourne. But it became obvious to me at least, around 2010, that to remain relevant in insurance practice, we needed to be national to service the large national insurance clients. To remain relevant as a corporate practice, we needed to be in Sydney. For many of our commercial clients, we needed to be national. And also to attract inbound work from overseas, we needed to be prominent, certainly in Sydney and nationally. So it became increasingly how we could grow geographically to remain on panels, to win panel appointments and to service our clients. And that became a real focus.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell the same story from my perspective. It became apparent early as an insurance practitioner that you needed that level of geographical coverage. That clients wanted to manage less relationships, not more, that you needed to provide that level of broader coverage. And so that was kind of a story that I was familiar with as well.
Yeah, increasingly that was the case,
yeah.
Wasn't it? The panels were becoming national, and maybe in some product lines they're becoming global now, and that's the kind of evolution that's happening. So that was very much a part of it. We needed to grow with our clients, and we needed to remain relevant to our corporate clients to win the big transactions in funds management and other areas that we were good in. We needed to have a Sydney presence, and we needed to know the right people in that market to service our big commercial clients. We needed to have national capability. So absolutely, that became a big part of the story from around about 2010 onwards, I suppose.
I mean, there's lots of mistakes that are made, and I've seen that firsthand. You don't get the strategy right for growth. I've seen that mistake. And the mistake that's often overlooked, but an important issue on growth that firms often don't invest in as well, because everyone has a huge collective sigh of relief once you do a deal, is the integration and the implementation. And you had to do not only the growth story, but achieve a level of integration of, teams in geographies reasonably quickly. What were some challenges? Was that a major focus?
Yeah, well, there were a few things, I think, Damien. Firstly, we had a general vision for how we wanted to grow and what we wanted to become, whilst remaining flexible and it not being too granular. Then we had a framework for making decisions, and that was that we always wanted there to be a strong strategic reason for bringing on a partner or a team or investing in an area. We wanted there absolutely be a really great cultural alignment and a buying into our culture and a meeting of the minds. And it kind of needed to make sense commercially and financially. But it was very much in that order, strategy and culture being first and foremost, and the financial imperative being important, but kind of secondary. And I think that that's different to most firms. I think for most firms, it's about the book of business that the person or the team was bringing, and the rest didn't really matter. So I think that we did that really well. We made decisions based around culture and strategy. And then what we absolutely did really well was execution and integration. And we really over-invested in that. And I think we still do. I certainly hope that we still do. But I just reckon we did that better than other firms. You'd see firms hire people and hire teams and grow quickly and then contract quickly. And some of those firms are now out of the market, whereas we always really invested in integration and making sure that there was good collaboration with the new people and teams and good cross-pollination. And we were patient. We gave people time to get established, and we tried to introduce work to them. And as managing partner, I really made that my role, and the role of really my partner leading the business, Sumit Pereira, who was and still is our COO. That was kind of our highest priority, to be really, really good at execution and fantastic at integration. And I think that's one of the reasons for our sustained growth and success, that we've been good at that.
Yeah, and I think that you're right in this sense that a lot of firms profess, it's about strategy and culture, the growth, but there is a level at which you can be blinded by the numbers and don't if you like, put strategy and culture first and foremost because of that blinding force, if I can call it that. But you were very alive to that bias, if you like, or that traditional way of thinking and tried to counter it.
Oh, hugely so. Yeah, absolutely prioritise that. Prioritise, as I say, culture and strategy, and then great execution and integration. And that meant that sometimes teams and partners would go to other firms, and over a beer we can kind of talk about, different circumstances over the years, but in the end lost teams. But we felt like we always made the right decisions for the right reasons. And as a result, not every single investment and hire was successful, but almost all were over time. There were very few mistakes.
In a growth mindset, there will be some unsuccessful experiments, won't there? But it seems that the premise of which you approached the job was, strategy, culture, and the finance will kind of look after itself over time.
Yeah, I think that's right. And some worked out better than others from a profitability perspective, but almost all ended up working out because we really focus, as you say, on the strategy and culture and integration and, invested in people. And, there's a spectrum of firms, Damien, in our market. There's firms that are really structured around individual high performance and rewarding outstanding individual performance. And many of those firms are great firms, and I've got huge respect for those firms and the people that lead them. And I don't need to say who those firms are, but people that understand the market know those firms. They're great. We're at the other end of the spectrum. We're all about being custodians of the firms for the future and investing in our clients and investing in the common good and being true to our purpose. And so we tended to attract people that kind of understood that and had aligned values and aligned views. And so there was a preparedness, I suppose, to make an investment in people and to be patient that there might not be maybe in some other firms with different structures and different cultures. Not to say they're wrong and we're right, but we're just kind of different, and we were very true to who we were.
You were really clear about the space you were playing in and what made you different.
100%.
That's
right.
And you need to be unashamed about that. So that brings me to culture, because it was at the forefront of the growth story, and I want to touch on that. Because I grew up, in insurance firms, and I remember in 2000 or thereabouts, when I was at Spark Helmer in the Brisbane office, start of the Spark story, there was a photo of people without ties on playing cricket in the corridor. We were young and we were groovy. And so what I'm trying to say is everyone professes great culture, but I don't know if you know this guy's work. It's called Steve Simpson, and he writes about unwritten ground rules of culture. So a good one is like what really happens behind the scenes as opposed to what people profess. So a good one in professional services, often an unwritten ground rule effectively, is we tolerate bad behaviour if you're a high revenue generator. That's a common one you might see. Another one might be, we talk about collaboration, but we incentivize people hogging work because that's effectively how people are rewarded financially. So those are some things I just thought I'd set the scene on that in terms of culture. So what were some of the cultural underpinnings and what were the hard decisions you had to make at times to ensure that they were front of mind and enacted?
Yeah, you're right. Everyone does talk about culture, and we certainly do. The legal market's to a significant extent undifferentiated, and we felt that if there was anything that we were to be known for or famous for, it was our culture and our collective culture, and maybe that, and being a progressive firm and this whole smarter law mantra that we have. And so we really invested in that and prioritised that and reinforced it at every opportunity. There were some positive things that we did. So we have our hallmarks, which are our values. Our hallmarks are stay true, be remarkable, evolve always, respect, better together. And they're beautiful. They were written by a guy called Pete Singline, who was a great friend of the firm, passed away recently. But there's really magic in how he communicates our hallmarks as compared to most value sets. And they were spoken about and lived every day and still are in our firm. They're fed into recruitment decisions and progression decisions and performance and pay decisions. And for me, as a managing partner, I communicated really actively, really every day or certainly every week to the firm, and always try and bring things back to my hallmarks and make sure that they were incorporated into everything that we did. And when it came to managing the firm and rewarding people and all of those things, our hallmarks and our culture were really front of mind. Certainly, as I said, when we make recruitment decisions. We would always think about our culture and whether there was alignment with our hallmarks. We were prepared to hold people back and even to move people on if we felt that there was behaviour that wasn't consistent with our hallmarks, and that happened quite a bit. And sometimes we could have done it quicker. We're not perfect, but definitely there was a kind of no dickheads rule that we tried to apply in the business. And also sometimes things that we didn't do. So, people would leave the firm. Recently, a large team left our firm. And to some extent, that would be because I guess there was a realisation on both sides that maybe there was a misalignment between our culture and our hallmarks and how we wanted to run the firm and how we wanted to reward people and how those people might feel about legal practice. And that's kind of okay. But sometimes it was us not doing things that we felt might be inconsistent with our culture and our hallmarks that I suppose led to things happening. In terms of metrics, yeah, absolutely. I think that there's still a work in progress for us, but we definitely always try to measure and recognise and reward team performance and introductions to others and non-financial KPIs. So we have a scorecard that includes non-financial KPIs. I think in law firms there is a bias to personal books of business, and we still sometimes, I think, are a bit blinded by that. But in my leadership, I tried really hard to enforce the non-financial KPIs and the team KPIs and make sure that those things were recognised and rewarded. So there's a bunch of stuff that I think reinforced the culture. But the consistent feedback we still get is that our culture stands out, and the people that choose to be at the firm and stay at the firm love the culture, and that's why they're there.
Well, in testing that theory, I had a coffee recently with one of your Brisbane partners, and she made the same point, unprompted, Tony. So
okay.
There you go.
Well, people self-select a little bit, don't they? And some people will choose not to come to our firm for good reasons because there's not a complete alignment. People might leave. That happens. But yeah, I think that people that are at our firm understand what we're about, and they make that intentional choice to be at our firm for that reason.
Even just the choice, when I was looking at your website again and preparing for this interview, I thought it was interesting, even just the choice of the word hallmarks, because it sort of cuts through the noise of values in a way. It sounds strange that words matter, but they do. And I just thought hallmarks are really interesting because it's really putting it much more strongly than values in a way. Was there much thought about the term hallmarks? Or was it the Hall and Wilcox spin-off?
Well, there was a bit in the end. But yeah, we had lots of goes at coming up with values, and there were too many and they were all boring and the same. And yeah, I'm a big believer in words. I'm a bit of a pedant around communication, and people in our firm, I think, got pretty sick of me talking about the importance of communication and changing comms. But I think our hallmarks are a great example of the power of fantastic communication, and a lot of thought went into them. And as I say, this person that we worked with who helped us articulate our values into our hallmarks made a really important contribution to the firm. And many people have said that our hallmarks are the best value set that they've ever seen, people that have had experiences with the firm or worked with the firm. So yeah, I think that was something that was worth investing in. Likewise, our smarter law mantra and strategy that came at around about the same time, I think maybe 2015, 2016. And that was a really important milestone in the firm, and that's something that has been really meaningful to us and helped define us in the market.
There's a human story, isn't there, in every leadership path? I mean, and I guess it brings me to this question, Tony. In my recent role of moving away from partner land, I'm doing a lot of mediation and coaching, and when I've thought about it, and these things develop organically, I've thought really my role in many ways in the coaching space is actually about relationships and conflict management, or helping people in that space. So that brings me to this question. Let me guess, was it at times the things that kept you up at night? Was it more around the people piece? Was it more around the partner piece, things that weren't going to plan? What were the things that you look back on that were the most stressful and difficult?
Yeah, definitely around people, Damien, that the best thing about the job is the people and the relationships and seeing people develop and thrive. And without a doubt, the hardest thing about the job is the people, and using influence and making sense of things for people to get everyone going in the same direction, and dealing with people that didn't want to go in the same direction or that acted in a countercultural way. So, the people stuff is awesome. You learn how to become good at it, but it was absolutely also what kept me awake at night. And, I really invested in my self-development as a leader, and I really learned over time to become less task-focused. I definitely have that bias, and to become much more empathetic in my leadership, and to really work hard on connecting with people and understanding their perspective. So that was a journey for me.
It's a very common journey in the law. I think the training we have as lawyers in terms of tasks and running a practice doesn't necessarily always equip us with some of the emotional intelligence skills of bringing people with you, and it's often learn on the job. I was the same, still learning in that space, I might add.
Well, for sure, and being very open about it. Since I've stepped down, had to learn to be better at that in my personal life. I think that I was pretty task focused, in my personal relationships and around my family, wanting to be present and to have a role, but always wanting to get things done and not necessarily taking the time to resolve things and to show empathy. And so, that's been something that I've had to work on since I've stepped down from the role and had some more time for reflection and to develop that self-awareness outside of work. So, it is a journey.
It is a journey, isn't it? All of us are on it. Was it when you took on the role, you've spoken about your interest in lifelong learning and some insights and reflection. So you were open to the idea that you needed further development and how did you undertake it? Was it formal, or was it through mentoring, or a combination of the two?
Yeah, everything really. I mean, I'm absolutely committed to and almost obsessed by lifelong learning, and there are lots of reasons why I finished in the role, but probably the biggest reason was that I felt like I wasn't really learning anymore. You're always learning to some extent, but I kind of felt like I'd done most of it. But in terms of my time as managing partner, I was really well supported by the firm to do formal professional development. I did a program at Melbourne Business School. I did the professional service firm program at Harvard that most of us do. I was fortunate to do a kind of 2-month program at Stanford in 2017, which was awesome and very developmental for me. I had coaches and mentors. I read really widely. My wife laughs at me because our bookshelf's full of self-help books and business books, and I read articles. So I'm a bit obsessed by that. I also try hard to make time for reflection and self-development and journaling, just try and ensure that I'm getting better all of the time. So I was really obsessed by continuing to learn and to develop and then to help others.
And I think the other challenge I've had in that space is when things go wrong a bit, or you look back in hindsight that could have been better, is to try to be kind to yourself. And that's been a struggle for me at times. And just go, well, it's all about a learning, and try to move on. Look, we can be quite critical. I think we can have quite a critical inner voice at times. I certainly have.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure. I've had to learn to see those sorts of things as a learning opportunity, both in my professional life and in my personal life as a partner and as a father. There's no point living with regret too much. You need to look at these things as learning opportunities.
Yeah, and I guess it brings me to what you've done now, which is quite unique, because I got to a similar point in my career where I thought I can stay comfortable, inverted commas. And it's not as though I wasn't learning at some level. There were learnings, but I felt that the majority of it had come and gone, and I needed this new challenge, and I needed to embrace the discomfort of that. And there was also a level of me, and there's pragmatic reasons in this. So financially I was able to, in terms of my family circumstance, which helps. But it was very much about stepping into a new skill set. And a lot of partners, we all do this. There's a human tendency to hold on. So it's a real credit to you, Tony, that you stepped down when you were still pretty much on top of your game. What was that about? Was it about that question of learning? Was it about ensuring succession? Or was it a combination of the two? Where were you at when you made that call?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of those two things. It was maybe feeling a little bit burnt out, but more so feeling like I wasn't really learning. I was kind of challenged by things, but challenged in a way that didn't feel like I was learning and developing. Look, I also felt like it was the right time for the firm. 17 years is a long time. We'd achieved a lot. We had a fully fledged national practice. It was time for someone to bring a fresh perspective to it. So I felt that was really important as well from the perspective of the business. And, so it's interesting. For me, I've been fortunate to be able to stay at the firm. It's been almost 12 months now. The first 6 months of that was really supporting the transition of leadership to my successor, who's the chief executive partner in the firm, Graydon Dowd. The last 6 months or so has been really focused on leading some strategic projects, particularly around clients and our global practice. And that's been great. It's really good to be in a client-facing role. I feel like I can really help join the dots and add something. But, if I'm going to continue to learn, I kind of need to start doing other things outside of the business. And so that's where I need to remove myself from my comfort zone to some extent. And, career transitions are pretty messy. And at first I thought I would move into another big CEO type role. I'm not sure that that's what I want to do now. I've just taken on a board role for another professional services firm, which I'm really excited about, and maybe thinking about doing a few more of those sorts of things. But yeah, I think you're right. I could stay at the firm and hang around for another 5 years and make some good money. But I think for me, I need to extract myself from that and, challenge myself by doing some other things and maybe making some space for other things in my life as well. Work's been a pretty big focus for 30 years.
It does. And I'm a year out of the transition. I could say there is light at the end. There is a good life that can happen. And I guess in my case as well you had a broader canvas in terms of the firm, but in my case as well, I appreciated that fresh pair of eyes needed to be across a major client relationship that I manage. It gets to a point where you feel as though it is time for another person to manage and that's great to be able to have that insight as a lawyer and to have enough insight to go, right, I've probably got to get out of the way. You really genuinely mean this, Tony. You've built a terrific legacy. It's, as I said, it's not an accident that Hall and Wilcox are where they're at today. I mean, you've grown the firm in your tenure by 10, and that's conservative, plus all the geographical reach, 7 new jurisdictions. And so I really appreciate you taking the time. I wanted this conversation to be, as it was, authentic, touching on culture, touching on strategy and touching on some of the key learnings. So I wish you all the best, mate, for the next endeavour. I think you'll absolutely smash. I hope you get a bit more family another time and enjoy the fruits of your hard work. It's a terrific legacy. And I've certainly... someone in the Brisbane market, know your people here and looked on with admiration on the Hall and Wilcox story in the last 17 years since I've been practicing in Brisbane and beyond. So congratulations and all the very best.
Thanks, Damien. I appreciate the opportunity.
Good stuff. Thanks again, Tony.